So I'm looking into my engine bay, and the intercooler I'll have tomorrow arrive in the post. So I'm going to make some brackets and just to finalise my ideas with the pipes. I don't think I'm going to change anything, the layout or anything, but I just want to have a look in anyway. And I'm going to take off the metal elbow at the back of the engine, the stainless one that the engine comes standard with, and turn around the rubber 90-degree bend and just kind of size things up a little bit more before I take the engine out. And of course, the next thing I got to do is, this is the throttle pedal. So it's an electric throttle pedal, so no cable. What you will notice in these guys is how little travel there is from like zero throttle to like full throttle. It's very, very little. Now, holding in your hand here, unless you had driven the Mark IV, you would say it's absolute shite. But it's actually quite enough throttle, and when there's a good feel back on the engine when you're driving them. It feels kind of like a cable. So don't pay any attention to that. As actually, if you have one of these guys, if you think there's something wrong with not enough travel, it's the way it is. So what I'm going to do here is, on the back of it here, you can see there's some features there to locate us. Get the camera to focus here. Maybe, maybe not. Make up its own mind. There we go. Some little features there that protrude up. So I get a piece of cardboard, draw around it, match these guys down, and then while I'm at the car, you're going to have to remove the standard throttle pedal, and that's just held in with a few spot welds, and get this guy then into a location that feels kind of normal. So for now, I've left in my driver's seat, the steering wheel are in, so that I can sit in the seat and put my feet down and just get a feel for it. With the throttle cable gone, this guy's just all nice and flappy. But this guy, of course, has a spring built into it, so he'll sit up in here. Take a little bit of work there, kind of figuring out something kind of like this. Because you can change this part of the bottom piece here is, so hands in the way there. This piece at the bottom here is metal. So this piece can be cut, welded, changed. You could chop this guy here and weld him back on to make it look factory looking. I think myself I'm going to leave the rubber on the pedal because there's rubbers on the brake pedal. I think it'll just blend in nicely. Make anybody take a blind bit of notice of that. So I'll get drawn and get cutting. Okay, got the old cardboard template cut out there. Just put the throttle pedal up on top of it, drew around it. So the throttle pedal comes down along here, and back up here. So I've got a bit of excess material left here, and the reason this guy is, I'm going to bend that over at 90 degrees on these guys, like so. And when I have those guys bent over, this section here will actually weld on to the firewall or bulkhead of the car, which from what I can see is going to give me a nice position on the throttle. There's a possibility I might have to angle it slightly this way or slightly that way, but what I think I'm going to do, what I might do is I could, I suppose, wedge this guy, or else what I could do is actually cut the throttle pedal itself and refix where the rubber is. That can be done easily enough as well, so it'll be one of the two, but from what I can see at the minute, this guy bent over, weld him onto the bulkhead, and that also gives me room here to put weld in some nuts at the backs of the holes when I have them drilled out. So the little holes are just literally these guys here, this mark here and this mark here are on the back of the throttle pedal. They're like a location guide. So what I've done is just put on top of my 1mm plate here, which I think is ample, just put this guy down on top of it, drew around him and punched through the holes, which I drew through the throttle pedal using a pencil, and then just start punch these guys up then. And what I'm going to do next then is, what I do a lot of cutting sheet metal with is this old guy here. It's just simple shears. I just clamp it into the vise typically like that. I think this guy here says it'll cut up to 6mm. I'm not too sure about that. It might really swing out of it. But most of the time here I'm cutting like 1 to 3mm or thereabouts with it. I have this guy now a lot of years and it works really, really well. Basically, if you've never seen one before, you just simply pull the lever down, or through the metal. It's got a little edge, this guy here, to stop the metal turning up like that when you're cutting. And you just basically feed out the metal, and the metal will continue to feed down this direction here. So you can cut a sheet like this, just a small section, but it's roughly maybe 500-600 millimeters long. You can cut with that with this. You're not restricted just to this distance here. It will continue out the back of the machine here, hence the bend here, like that, which makes it right handy. It could be bolted onto a bench, of course, but I don't use it every day, so I just think clamping into the vise there just works the finest for me. And just chop around the metal there. It's quicker than a grinder, less sparks. I'm a little caught for space here, I suppose. As you can see, my workbench is next to the car. I suppose I'd be like a typical of a lot of people. They'd be at this kind of work on the home front. I don't have a big warehouse to put angle grinders and cutters on one side and cars on the other side. I just gotta do it what I have. So no lifts, all that kind of stuff, but you manage away, you know, no rush. I've got my bracket cut now. I've got it bent, just bent it inside the vise. I cut most of the metal off with the shears, just ran around it, just cut close to the edges, if you catch my drift, and just then give it a run of a flappy wheel, the grinder, just to round off the edges. So I've got some holes drilled now. And just as a bit of a tip, I guess, what I think works well myself for welding on nuts, or captive nuts. I've got the hole drilled here, which should be kind of close enough to the drill size, like for an M6, which is kind of like 5mm. So I put the drill bit through, the nut fits on over it, I clamp in the vise, and I'll weld in here just to get the initial location of the nut, so that my nut is in the middle of the hole. When you're welding 1mm metal like that, and the nut there, which is kind of thick in comparison to the material, you want to try and get as much heat into the nut as possible, I guess, and not to be burning away the 1mm metal. The 1mm metal now with the fold on it makes it very, very strong. There's no fear of that. So basically I've got 3 nuts to weld in. I've got little squares, just drilled holes for these guys and just filed them out with just a simple square file. That's this guy here. And those guys then fit into the back, of the throttle pedal, these guys here. These guys are rectangular, but I've filed my holes square because I guess I don't have a file small enough for them, and you've got to be drilling very small holes. So I'm getting close to this guy here now, to finish him off. Give him a small lick of a bit of primer, and once I've got the pedal box out of the car, and I'm going to mark up first with a marker or something where to tack this guy on, and I'll go ahead then and do that and weld it into the car while the engine is out. Okay, so I've got my M6 nut tacked on in all 3 holes, and because I use basically, I suppose, the drill bit for drilling M6, what I do is I put the drill then from the far side with a tap in it, and basically just run the drill in and right the way through. I'm trying to hold that with one hand now and hold the camera with the other, so I'm going to wreck it, but I've already done that. So basically now on my little bracket, I suppose there's like a portion here where there's kind of like a millimetre of thread, not that it really matters, but it just means that my thread lines up, so that when I'm putting my screws in for my foot pedal, I won't have any difficulty, and I have to give it a shot of paint. I shouldn't have to be readjusting it. The welds don't have to be anything mental strong here now, because this thing is with focus. Because really the nuts are, all you got to do is just stop them from turning and not fall off when you're putting in the pedal. So that's that bit done now. So I'll get that clean up now, get rid of the oil off it, give it a little shot of, I like using the high zinc primer, so I'll give it a little shot of that and put it away until I'm ready to weld it into the car. Well, I have the engine back out again. Came out pretty easy. Just remove the mounts I made up, let the engine hang off the crane, lifted it up, slight diagonal, and comes out handy enough. I'm expecting to go back in easier. This is the stainless pipe I was referring to earlier, so it's this guy here. So I'm going to remove this fella, not going to use that anymore, and there's a rubber elbow joint here, and I'm going to turn that out, we say, in this sort of direction here. These pipes, which are for the hot water here, these guys will need a little bit of trimming. They're a little bit on the too long side for the Mark 1. The Mark 1, I could probably cut them back to around here somewhere, I think, and it'll all just clip in together for me. I'd like to use these clip-in guys if I can, so I'm going to have a go at making up a piece, the opposite piece there, to fit into the Mark 1 pipe. See if I can clip it in on one side, and maybe down around here somewhere. Then I was thinking of putting the actual little simple mechanical valve from the car out to let the water flow or not, as in basically so it can heat the cabin. So that's that guy. And inside my engine bay here, a lot of space now to do anything. You'll notice I've taken off the brake linkage that converts the brakes, we'll say, for the right-hand drive cars. And over here I have the brake linkage set up here. It comes out easy enough. Got to undo a couple of clips, a couple of bolts, and then it's out of the way. That's that. I was kind of looking at this guy and I was just kind of wondering to myself, I was saying, if you bought a car that had the brake servo on the driver's side and you didn't want it there anymore for some sort of engine swap reason, and you decided, I know, I'm going to move the servo over to the left-hand side of the car and make up a linkage to do it, I think if you were showing people this, they might start second-guessing you and saying, what the hell are you at? So it is a fair monstrosity of a thing there. I think people would be questioning what you'd be at. That's where that is now. So what I'm going to at next now is I'm going to remove the steering rack. I'm going to offer up the Toyota one. I mean, I know it fits. So just remove the gator here, a couple of bolts. This thing's come off really, really easy. I have some poly mounts on it at the minute. They were a kit I bought off GSF Car Parts. There's like a complete Mark 1 golf kit, so all the bushings are polyurethane. I won't be putting polyurethane bushings back on mainly because I don't have them, because the Toyota bushings bushings aren't interchangeable between the Toyota rack and the Volkswagen rack. So I'll get cracking on that next and move along. And as we're saying, the steering rack is out. I've also started removing some other pieces as well. I've got the heater matrix connection, the pipes out. They look a little bit tired, so we'll replace them with some silicone stuff, some new stuff. Remove the material I had there on the bulkhead there, this silver type material. It's like a heat shield, I suppose, of such. Try and keep some heat out of the cabin. I've got that off, so I flattened back a lot of the tabs there, just kind of keep them out of the way for the minute so I won't get stuck on them. For changing to the direct acting servo here, there's a bracket here that VW put in. This guy here as a strengthener, I suppose. It just tacks onto part of the chassis like here. It's just one run of weld right here. So I've kind of hooked back just to see if I can get the camera to focus here. There we go. I just, with a screwdriver there, just hooked back basically the paint and a bit of Schultz and type stuff that were around the weld there. Everything looks nice and good there. There's no sign of corrosion at all in the car. So that is just tacked on there, welded on there. Just cut that off with an angle grinder, remove that bracket. And I also have a bracket here in the car. Now this car I think started off life as a 1.6 diesel. So I'm not really sure what this actual bracket's for. It doesn't seem to perform any function in the car now. So I think I might take that out of the way as well. There's only a couple of spot welds on it there. It's nothing crazy. There's like 6 in the top and 4 on the bottom. So I think it's going to come off it. Probably just holding some sort of air box or something maybe at some point. It ain't required anymore anyway, so I'm going to remove that there. Kind of tidy up the car a little bit. So I'm going to chop that off. You can see I have the steering gator boot gone and the linkage gone. So when I have that done, then I'll fit up the rack. So the idea of cutting off the bracket first, I suppose, is stop the sparks going down on top of the rack. There's no point grinding down on top of it, and there's no need to. It take a minute to get rid of it anyway, and we'll drive on from there then. I guess I've attacked the car with the old angle grinder and remove this piece. So the only welds you have to cut are up at the top here. It's like a weld, like with a MIG welder. It's like a wire weld. So just chop across there. There is no welds in the back. Nice to see what looks like a relatively clean piece of metal. So there's no real corrosion there. Slight amount of surface rust. And I've given it then a quick rub at a flappy wheel. And just to remove the marks. I've started drilling out this guy here. Okay, I've got that bracket hacked off now. So it turns out 6 spot welds in the top. There wasn't any spot welds in the bottom. There was a dimple mark right. You can see this where I went with the drill bit there. But I thought it was spot welded, but it wasn't. You can see where I drilled my little hole there. That wasn't a spot welded hole. It was a mark of some sort. But it turns out this guy was a little bit of weld on the 2 corners, here and here. So I gave it a run of the angle grinder disc. You can see some bit of a mark I suppose I've left, and I ran over with the flappy wheel as well there. So now I'm nice and cleaned up and back to what looks normal. I guess this place here wouldn't be a bad place if a fellow wanted to strengthen up a chassis of a car, one of these old Golfs, to plate them here just like that. Wouldn't be such a bad idea. And while I'm at it, I know this looks a little crap here, but it's just surface there. Metal's still good there. I hooked out all the sealer. That's all this sort of crap that was in the corner there. So I'm going to give that a good run of a wire wheel and some rust treatment stuff, but the metal is actually plenty good there. So that's no harm, I suppose, when you're at this stage of a car, ripping it up and cutting it and stuff. And if you see any parts that are a bit iffy looking, no harm having a hook around. This would be one of the old Mk1 chassis, the Golf, bad spots for the water. Naturally the rainwater runs down here and in here. And this guy isn't sloped at an angle, so it runs off all the time. It is flat, so I suppose it does probably well a little bit of water there. And once the water starts getting in behind the sealant, it's trapped and just stuck there. So I'll give that a good run of a wheel and some rust treatment, and that'll be good. Of course, I will be doing some cutting here anyway. This section here that's sloped out, and like this, you can see the profile of it there. This, when the servo's fitted, this has to be flat. So I'll be cutting this somewhere across here and down here, in around there, someplace like that. But once I get the servo in my hands, I didn't keep templates from the last time I done it. Should have done, I suppose, but I probably figured I wouldn't be doing it again or something. But because I had some cardboard cutouts made, I dumped them. So if I had them now, I'd be able to continue. So servo's on the way, and when I get that, work will continue there. I decided I might as well strip out the wiring off the left-hand side of the car as well, take out the wires. There's a few little jobs, I suppose there's a few holes in the car there. I'm not sure what the hell they're for or anything like that, so I think I'm going to weld up those guys and fit them up. Kind of a funny, odd-looking hole that was drilled in the car at some point. So that's this guy here. So I'm not actually using this hole here at all. I don't know what it was for. But I'm going to make up a little piece of metal there and just put it in there and weld it up. I am using those 2 holes. One for is kind of like the engine running loom for the clocks, which would be like the oil light switch and stuff like that, temperature. And the other one is for the lights. For making repairs to this type of stuff, what I like to do is make yourself a cardboard template or a cardboard cutout, and then cut around the shape and put the piece in and weld the piece in flush, as opposed to putting a patch over it and welding all around it. When you do that, of course, you are leaving somewhere for moisture to get in behind. You probably can't access it for a bit of paint or anything like that. And there's not really that much extra work involved in making, let's say, a little piece that fits the actual hole you want to fill and weld it in and keep it flush. I think it's much cleaner looking anyhow. So what I've done here is, because I've only got 1 pair of hands, and on the far side of the bulkhead, obviously can't reach in around there, the hands aren't that long. So what I've done is I've just used a piece of paper tape and stuck on a piece of cardboard. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to draw around the piece I want, and then take off my piece of cardboard and cut around with the scissors, and then transfer the mark out to a little small piece of metal and cut around that, and in turn then weld that back in. The way I am in the car at the minute, of course, there's no battery, there's really nothing electrical, there's no ECU. I've got a steering wheel maybe and some taillights, and that's about all the electrics are left in the bar radio. So if you were welding a car where the battery is connected up, and maybe you've got some sensitive electronic equipment like ECUs and stuff like that, I think it's definitely worth disconnecting the arc from the battery. I think most people would know that at this stage anyway. I suppose if you have a really modern car, you probably shouldn't be welding it anyway. where if you disconnect the battery, you lose a lot of ECU stuff like that. But the disadvantage of not disconnecting the battery is the electric current when you're welding takes the path of least resistance back to the battery or back to the ground. So while the welder itself is not actually connected to the battery, once you put your earth clamp onto the car, it now kind of is connected to the battery. Because if you're welding somewhere and your earth is a good distance away, we'll say if I was to put, for example, the earth clamp onto a strut tower on the opposite side of the car, the current from the welder is going to go through the body of the car onto the strut tower and back into the welder. Now, if you've got earth wires onto the body of the car, the current is going to be passing those earth wires. And some electronic equipment, even though you switch the keys off, is still live. So the current can go through the electronic equipment and back in through the body of the car and then back onto the strut tower and back into the welder. So you might find yourself with a situation where you weld something up and then you've got to start your car up afterwards and you've got fault lights and all that kind of stuff. I know it's more relevant to modern cars, but when you do engine swaps, people might forget that the ECUs are out of, we'll say, in this case, a 2000 Volkswagen Golf. So if I had that connected up in here, there is a chance that I could actually fry the ECU and not even realize I'm doing it, think I'm doing a great job. So I'm going to continue on now and mark this guy up, cut up my piece, and then set up my welder and tack it in. Okay, after about, I suppose, I guess a half an hour of trimming down the metal and checking and rechecking, I've got my piece welded in. It's not a work of art or anything, but it's pretty smooth. Run your fingers across there, can't really feel it. It's not that massively important anyway, it's not like it's a door skin or anything. What I did when I welded this piece in here was I actually left my repair piece kind of hanging out here. I should have taken a picture really, I suppose. I let it stick out maybe a centimetre or so extra. And when I was welding it in, I used that little extra centimetre to grip onto the patch, kind of one of these kind of grippers. So I was able to hold onto that fillet in there, kind of in that type of fashion, if you could imagine the little piece bent a small bit in the end, which made tacking it up initially a little bit easier. And what it does as well then is when you're running the weld in first, you can start welding your patch and tack the corners, run the weld into this, because my repair piece is 1 millimetre thick. The car itself is about 0.8, so you can concentrate the weld on the patch as opposed to the car to prevent burning holes through the car. So I gave it a run in at the grinder, in the kind of a flappy wheel, and then a die grinder. I die grinded this piece out. I just got a piece of round bar that was the same diameter, more or less, put it up, and just kind of drew around it there with a marker and just die grinded it out now. I'll have to give the inside of it a small bit of a clean up as well, but it's not much, as the weld didn't really protrude in through the metal too much. Next I'm going to tackle here now is I'm going to drill this guy out, and then I'm going to drill that guy out over here. I've found now I've cleaned off the paint here. Oops. I've cleaned off the paint and I found where my spot welds are. So just a couple of welds to drill there, and it'll be soldering on. My Renault servo, or Peugeot as it turns out this time, is on its way, so I should have it tomorrow. So the next job will be sizing up this hole here to put in the direct acting servo. Just thought I'd take a quick clip maybe of removing some of the brackets in case anyone is interested. What I normally do is like 3.5, 4 millimeter drill bit, and find the spot where it's clean it out, a flappy wheel. Find the spots that they can seem invisible at first, but you will see there is little indentations if you look carefully. And I typically kind of drill in with it like a 3mm bit. I know you can buy the drill bits for removing spot welds, but I find them that they just break all the time. Maybe I'm a bit rough. And then I'll continue on then with maybe a 6.5, 7, that sort of size of drill bit on the DeWalt. And the idea is I'll try my best to drill in just a little. So if I can focus in there, the idea being that I'm kind of drilling into the plate and not so much into the car. So the 3mm hole goes through. Of course, if I was a bit more careful, I wouldn't have to. But I'm going to put plug welds in these guys anyway, so I'm not really concerned about the hole there. So once you get those little guys drilled out, then if you're fairly on center, the kind of like the 6, 7, 8mm drill bit works well. If you're a bit off center, you might have to go maybe a 10 to chamfer them out, and to maybe sometimes get them started. I'll typically use is like a chisel guy like this, and put it in behind the car somewhere, hit it a few whacks of a hammer, and eventually these guys start to, oh, there she goes, these guys will just break off, and bit of rust back there. Not bad for 35 odd years, I suppose. Not bad at all. Anyway, so put in a few plug welds here, just covering the holes there from the drilling, just so that show it. And I've started, you can see a spatter of welds here and there around the bits of the car here. I have started filling in anything, really don't know what it's for. So the plan is to grind these back, not that I'm trying to make a show car out of it, but there's a plethora of holes down here that I have no idea what some of them are for. Some of them are I wonder, and some of the holes were there for bolting in the battery tray. But the rest of them I haven't a clue what the fuck they're for.